You were programmed and didn't even realize it. Since birth, your mind has been shaped to see the world in a specific way. Everything you believe, everything you fear, everything you think is impossible might not even be yours. It could be part of an invisible program. The worst part? You never had a choice. Until now. The Matrix isn't just a sci-fi concept. It's real, and it's inside your mind. Your life, your thoughts, your emotions, everything has been influenced by a system that doesn't want you to wake up. But something inside you has already started to break free, and if you found this video, it wasn't by accident. Now you have a choice. Keep living inside the program or see the truth. You think you're in control of your life, but what if most of your choices weren't really yours? Since birth, your mind has been shaped to see the world in a certain way. Your fears, beliefs, and limitations may not be real. They might just be the result of an invisible program that keeps you trapped without you even noticing. Society, culture, and family shape the way you interpret reality. From an early age, you were taught to be afraid, to limit yourself, to accept that some dreams are unreachable. You are told that life is hard, that suffering is inevitable, and that only a few people deserve success. But what if all of this was just a code implanted in your mind, a code you never consciously chose? How many times have you felt incapable before even trying? How many times have you settled for less than you deserve because an inner voice told you that's all you could get? That voice isn't yours. It's the leftover programming you received. The mental matrix works exactly like this. Beliefs passed down for generations, reinforced by the media, by education, and by the invisible rules that define what is right and acceptable. The scariest part, you live under this influence without even realizing it. The human mind is powerful, but when it runs on autopilot, reality becomes a reflection of the beliefs that were planted in you. You don't choose, you just repeat. You don't question, you just react. Like an echo of a system that has conditioned you from the start. Most people live like this, following paths they never chose, accepting barriers imposed by a system that needs them to stay asleep. But something inside you has already started to wake up. That's why you're here. Reality isn't fixed. It shapes itself according to your consciousness. But before you can change it, you need to see the invisible bars that keep you trapped. The first step to escaping the prison is realizing you're in one. But how was this prison built? How can you be trapped without even noticing? As a child, your mind was an open field, absorbing everything without filters. Every word from your parents, every criticism, every rule about what's right or wrong was recorded in your subconscious without question. Without realizing it, you started building your worldview based on this programming. Phrases like, money is dirty, life is a struggle, success isn't for everyone, or you have to suffer to deserve may have been said casually, but their repetition turned them into absolute truths. You started reacting to life based on these ideas, never stopping to ask if they actually made sense. The mental matrix strengthens itself through repetition. First, you hear it. Then, you believe it. Finally, you live according to these beliefs without realizing you could think differently. Your brain, just like a computer, was programmed to operate within these rules, and what you call reality might just be a reflection of this invisible code. If, since childhood, you were taught that the world is cruel and that everything must be earned through struggle, you grow up distrusting, always expecting the worst. If you learned that love hurts, that happiness is temporary, your mind creates invisible barriers that keep you from trusting and relaxing. If they made you believe you're not capable, your subconscious sabotages every opportunity that could prove otherwise, and so you keep repeating patterns that aren't yours. You live out inherited dramas, suffer because of beliefs you never chose, act and react as part of an invisible mechanism that controls your existence. But there's something no one told you. This programming isn't permanent. The system wants you to believe you have no choice. But the truth is, at any moment, you can rewrite the code. You don't have to carry the weight of imposed beliefs. But to change, you first need to recognize what was implanted in you without your permission. how to break free from repetitive cycles. You're living the same story over and over again. The same problems, the same challenges, the same cycles that seem to repeat as if they were an inevitable part of your life. But what if I told you they're not? The mental matrix wants you to react the same way every time because that's how it keeps you trapped. When something goes wrong, your mind goes into autopilot, frustration, fear, anger, discouragement. And that reaction is exactly what feeds the problem, making it repeat itself. But here's the secret. It's not the problem that keeps you stuck. It's your reaction to it. If you keep reacting the same way, nothing changes. But the moment you stop giving the response the matrix expects, the programming starts to break. Picture this. Every time something bad happens, your mind already knows the script. You complain, you get angry, you feel like life is against you. And without realizing it, you're repeating the exact same cycle that brought you here. But now, imagine a different scenario. Something happens, an unexpected problem, a frustration, a loss. But this time, you do something different. Instead of falling into the same automatic reaction, you observe. Instead of panicking, you breathe. Instead of reacting, you choose. And in that moment, something shifts. You feel it. The energy doesn't spread the same way. The problem that seemed huge starts losing its grip. The matrix weakens. This doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is fine. It means you're no longer giving your energy to the same cycle. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to live through the same problems over and over? Always the same financial struggles, the same toxic relationships, the same limitations. And when you look closer, you see that they always react the same way. Now, look at your own life. What keeps repeating? What doesn't seem to change no matter how hard you try it? What's the automatic reaction you always have? That's your matrix code, and you can break it right now. It all starts the moment you realize you have a choice. The matrix loses control when you stop playing the game. And then a new question arises. What happens when you start reacting differently? That you're about to find out. The portal to expanded consciousness. The human mind has been conditioned to move away from what is natural. We live surrounded by concrete, screens, and artificial noise that disconnect us from the only source capable of restoring our balance. Nature. The system wants you to forget, wants you to believe that healing comes from outside, from medicine, from distractions, from something you need to chase. But the truth, the real technology of life is already available all around you, waiting for you to remember. When you walk barefoot on the earth, something changes. Your body releases built-up electrical charge, stress levels drop, and your mind quiets down. This process has a name: grounding. The simple physical connection with the earth regulates your nervous system, strengthens your energy field, and aligns you with the natural frequency of life. But what science is only beginning to understand, the ancients knew for centuries. Let me share a story with you. In a secluded village, surrounded by ancient forests, there lived a man named Kale. Since childhood, he was taught that life was a struggle and that progress was in the cities, far from the trees and rivers that surrounded him. Over time, he began to despise the ground beneath his feet. He always wore shoes, avoided the wind on his face, ignored the sound of birds. His life became a constant rush, and his mind an endless storm. Until one day, while hurrying through the forest to reach the nearest city, Kale tripped and fell hard to the ground. But when he tried to get up, he noticed something strange. He couldn't move. His muscles were locked up, as if some invisible weight was holding him down. The only thing he could do was lie there, feeling the cold earth beneath him, breathing in the damp scent of the leaves, listening to the branches sway in the wind. Minutes passed, then hours, and Kale began to feel something he had never felt before: silence. But not the silence of a place without noise. It was an internal silence. For the first time, his mind stopped racing. He was present. When he finally stood up, something inside him had shifted. The weight he had been carrying on his shoulders was gone. His heart beat to a different rhythm, slower, calmer. His eyes saw the forest with a clarity that hadn't been there before. That day, Kale realized that what had been keeping him trapped weren't visible chains. but his disconnection from something that had always been part of him. He had disconnected from nature, and by doing so, he had disconnected from himself. From that moment on, Gil started walking barefoot whenever he could, touching the trees, feeling the water run between his fingers. And the more he did, the more he realized that the energy of nature didn't just heal his body, it healed his mind and spirit too. What Cale discovered by accident is something you can access at any time. Connecting with nature isn't just beautiful or relaxing, it's a reconnection with the source of life itself. Your body belongs to the earth, which is why being in nature brings an instant feeling of relief. You feel like you are where you're supposed to be. For centuries, humanity has lived under a carefully maintained illusion, the idea that reality is objective, fixed, independent of us. But now that view is collapsing. Something bigger is happening, a shift that traditional science is hesitant to admit, but one that can no longer be ignored. We are in the middle of a planetary transition, a revolution in the way we perceive existence. You feel it, don't you? Something is different. You may not be able to explain it, but you know something is happening, and that something is the awakening of consciousness. Science has always tried to understand the world through matter, ignoring the role of the mind, but in the past decade, research in quantum physics has started revealing a secret that some spiritual traditions have known for thousands of years. Consciousness is not just a product of the brain, it is the fabric of reality itself. And the proof? Quantum mechanics has already shown that reality isn't what we thought it was. At the subatomic level, particles don't have a defined state until they are observed. Reality changes depending on the consciousness that observes it. That means everything you perceive is fixed. Your life, your circumstances, your limitations isn't set in stone. What keeps you trapped isn't the world out there, but the way you see it. And it's not just me saying this. Scientists like Thomas Campbell, a former NASA physicist and one of the leading researchers of consciousness, argue that the universe functions more like a simulation than a physical machine. To him, reality is an information system where consciousness is the main player. Physicist Amit Goswami, a pioneer in the quantum view of consciousness, went even further by stating that matter cannot exist without consciousness. And Dean Radin, another major researcher, conducted experiments showing that human intention can measurably influence physical events. So why does traditional science still resist this shift? Because accepting that consciousness creates reality means destroying everything we've been taught about how the world works. It means admitting that you have power over your own life, and a world where every person understands this power is not a world that's easy to control. If consciousness shapes reality, that means your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are shaping the world around you at every moment. And if that's true, what happens when billions of people start realizing it at the same time? That is the awakening. That is the transition. We are moving out of an era dominated by the matter and into an era where the mind is recognized as the creative force of reality. Why don't they want you to know this? But if science already knows that consciousness influences reality, why isn't this widely accepted yet? Because this truth is dangerous to those who have always been in control. Think about it. Your whole life, you've been taught to believe that reality is external, fixed, beyond your reach, that you need to fit into the system, follow the rules, obey, that the world operates in a rigid way, and that your individual actions don't have any real impact. But now, imagine what would happen if everyone realized that consciousness is the foundation of reality. If they knew that their mind shapes their experiences, that what they believe becomes real, that the system only exists because people uphold it with their limiting beliefs. This knowledge would destroy entire structures of power. Many institutions, governments, religions, big corporations depend on your ignorance. They need you to believe you have no control, that you need a middleman to live well, that without them you'd be lost. But the new science, quantum physics, and the understanding of consciousness threaten all of this. The old materialist science fights to maintain its mechanistic worldview because if the consciousness paradigm is accepted, the control model collapses. The idea that our minds can influence matter, that reality is a construction of our perception, that we are more than just physical bodies takes power away from institutions and gives it back to you. That's why all of this is labeled as pseudoscience, quackery, delusion. Because if people discover the truth, the system falls apart. And now we get to the most important part. How this information directly impacts your life. If reality shapes itself to your consciousness, then what happens when you spend most of your time thinking about fear, scarcity, and problems? What happens when you focus on what's wrong, on what's missing, on what worries you? You create more of it. The universe doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you fear. It only responds to your vibration. Whatever you put energy into grows. If you doubt this, look at your own life. Have you noticed how some situations seem to repeat themselves? How certain problems never go away, no matter how hard you try to avoid them? Here's a real example. Imagine someone who always struggles with money. Every time a new problem arises, this person panics, feels powerless, believes they'll never have enough. What happens? Reality responds to that mental pattern. New debts appear, opportunities get blocked, and the cycle never ends. Now, imagine that one day, this same person decides to change how they react. Instead of panicking, they choose calm. Instead of focusing on the problem, they start seeing possibilities. They refuse to feed fear, and little by little, their vibration shifts. And as a reflection, the reality around them begins to change too. This isn't coincidence. This is the rule. You can't control everything that happens around you, but you can control how you respond. And the way you respond defines the reality you experience. So stop for a moment and look at your life. Where is your attention? What are you putting energy into? Because that is exactly what's growing. The new era. What comes after the Matrix? And what if I told you that everything you're looking for is already here, right now? The Matrix wants you to believe that your happiness, your fulfillment, and your inner peace are always somewhere in the future. It wants you to chase something that never arrives, to get lost in worries, regrets, and anxieties. But here's the truth. No one tells you. The only moment that exists is the present. The past, it's gone. The future, it hasn't arrived yet. But your mind is trapped in these places all the time. It drags you into old memories, making you relive pain, resentment, and stories that should have been left behind. Or it keeps you anxious about what hasn't happened yet, creating scenarios of fear, doubt, and uncertainty. And while you're lost in these thoughts, you miss the now. But the now, it is all there is. The present is a portal. The more you anchor yourself in it, the more you free yourself from the Matrix. Because in the present moment, fear doesn't exist. Scarcity doesn't exist. The pain of the past can't touch you, and the future has no power over you. Now is where you have a choice. It's where your consciousness creates. And there's a simple practice that can take you straight to this realization. Observation without judgment. Watch your thoughts like clouds in the sky. Just see them pass by without clinging to any of them. You don't have to believe everything your mind tells you. You don't have to react to every emotion that comes up. The more you become the observer, the closer you get to the truth. And the more time you spend in the present, the more you realize that reality adjusts to your internal state. That's why the great spiritual masters have always taught about the power of now, because this is where you have the ability to change everything. But what if I told you this shift is already happening on a global scale? Look around. People are not the same anymore. What used to be dismissed as craziness, esotericism, or conspiracy theories is now being studied, debated, and accepted by scientists, philosophers, and researchers all over the world. We're in the middle of a transition. For a long time, humanity was asleep, living on autopilot, following imposed patterns without question. But now, something has changed. More and more people are waking up to the truth that reality isn't imposed, it's created. What comes after the Matrix? A new level of consciousness, an era where people no longer live as victims, but as creators, where scarcity and fear no longer have space because we understand that reality responds to what we emit, where we no longer depend on a system to tell us what to think, how to act, or what to believe in. But this transition doesn't happen overnight, And like any deep transformation, it brings chaos before reorganization. If you look at the world right now, it might seem like everything is getting worse. Wars, crises, polarization, destruction. But what if this is just the collapse of the old system, making way for something new? And in the middle of this chaos, the only thing that can keep you on the right path is your inner peace. Staying calm, having faith, and keeping clarity during this transition is essential. Because the more people wake up, the faster the matrix weakens. The more people realize that reality is created by consciousness, the less power the system, which depends on fear to survive, has. Breaking free from the matrix is an individual journey, but one that transforms the collective. And now, knowing all of this, the choice is in your hands. Will you continue living inside the program, or will you step through the portal into the new era of consciousness? But before you go, I have something important to show you. Everything we've talked about here was just the beginning. There's a special video waiting for you, one more step on this awakening journey. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident, so don't leave yet. Click on the video appearing on your screen, and let's continue this conversation there. I'll see you on the other side.